What do you get when you combine roguelike elements, some Fortnite concepts, and Elden Ring assets? Well, you get Elden Ring Nightrain. I know. You're probably saying that is a terrible idea, but I'm here to share my combined 15-hour experience with Elden Ring Nightrain network test over the weekend and why I think this game is worth your time. Stay tuned in the video as we'll be going over some best practices and strategies for going out on expeditions as the game calls them. To start off with, this game is going to be aimed at an audience that already knows Souls and Souls like games and has experience with Elden Ring, which, considering the massive success that game was, I believe it's a lot of you already. I'll say up front also that I'm a person who normally is not a big fan of roguelikes, and the reason for that is because I literally have no luck at all. And so an entire gameplay loop surrounded by the player getting lucky and receiving insane equipment to complete the game is just something that I wasn't a fan of. Not saying that roguelikes are bad games at all, just something not for me. When we got the first reveal of Nightrain and discovered what the game was all about, I said to myself, well, if there is one roguelike I am going to like and play, it would be this one, considering how much I love Elden Ring. So I'm going to structure the breakdown of the game here on how everything plays out, along with things I liked and didn't like and potential suggestions for improvements. Also, all footage you're seeing here on the screen is from Blue Lizard Jello's stream, which I was a part of. I unfortunately couldn't stream it over the weekend. I'm not going to bore you with the reasons why, but anyway. We start out in the network test and the roundtable hold, and a pretty cool version of roundtable hold, I may add. There's a sparring ground where you can attack dummies or spawn a marionette enemy to fight in real time. There's also a chest where you can grab every piece of equipment and consumable from Elden Ring to test it out. You have the availability to configure your level because there are minimal character level requirements for using some of the better weapons in the game, as well as make your stamina and FP regenerate faster. We started with 4 classes to choose from, and they were all great. To my understanding, there's a day one DLC that you can get with the deluxe edition that will add another 4 classes, so 8 classes in total. Going over the classes, first of all, there is Wilder, who is your typical sword and board character who I'm inclined to think is a little more strength focused, but he is overall kind of vanilla. Unfortunately, the typical damage stats were hidden in Night Rain, so we couldn't really dig into the particulars of that too much. He starts with a greatsword and has a buckler for parries. Each character has a passive ability, regular ability, which has a brief cooldown, and an ultimate ability which you recharge by attacking enemies. Wilder has a grappling hook that can pull enemies close or pull himself to objects or bigger enemies and bosses. His ultimate is a chargeable explosive that deals high stance damage to enemies. The passive ability for Wilder is a one-time cheat death ability as well, so it's kind of nice. Guardian is your tank character, and he seems like he may be quality focused, meaning his stats would be evenly distributed between strength and dexterity. He starts with a great shield and halberd. Your passive ability with this class is a steel guard, which I didn't get to test too much, but from B-roll footage I saw that from software provided, it looks like using that ability he was able to mitigate deathblight, but doesn't seem quite right, and I wasn't willing to test that out, as you might imagine. For a regular ability, you have a whirlwind attack that can launch smaller enemies up in the air. His ultimate is pretty awesome, and he can jump high in the air and come crashing down with a massive AoE. This is very helpful for reviving your teammates if they go down, but also to deal high damage and stance damage to bosses. Duchess is a DPS machine. She starts with a dagger, which can be imbued with magic once the Ash of War is used on it. Her passive is her agile movement and is able to reach further when attacking and dodging. You can spam dodge pretty much and use a very little stamina with her. The Duchess's abilities are pretty awesome as well. The regular ability is called Replay, which allows you to reapply the last damage the enemy received again. So this can reapply status, ailment procs, etc. But in testing, I don't think it reapplies the damage your teammates do to the enemy. Combat gets hectic at times, so while I was trying to test out in the field, sometimes it was hard to see what was actually working and happening if everybody was ganking on an enemy or a boss. The Recluse is your spellcaster. However, this character was probably the most complex of the bunch. The passive ability allows you to suck up to 3 certain elements off of enemies and players and store them for use in your regular ability, which is called Magic Cocktail. Doing this would also cause the caster to receive FP back. What I mean by certain elements here is that in my testing, blood, frost, and poison elements couldn't be extracted, but correct me if I'm wrong here, definitely. Magic, fire, and lightning elements could be extracted, and based on which specific ones and combinations you extracted when releasing your regular ability, the resulting action could be different. For instance, if you extracted magic, fire, and lightning, when activating Magic Cocktail, you would dash towards and through the enemy as a lightning bolt, kind of like the Flash, dealing damage. If you extracted all lightning and then activated Magic Cocktail, it resulted in your dodges being electrified and the travel distance on them was much greater. It sounds complex, I know, but trust me, if you take the time to test this out in the sparring grounds, it's pretty awesome. The Recluse's ultimate ability takes a few seconds to cast, but you have iframes during it, and what it does is mark enemies in a certain radius, and when you and your party hits the enemy, you get health and FP back. So very interesting and dynamic class here, but as you can imagine, very squishy. Like you can get one-shotted the minute you head into battle. But we'll go into some strategies when going into combat in a little bit here. Some other things we had access to in the network test were a visual codex where you can read a lot about the controls and mechanics in the game, so I suggest spending some time reading through that. It was pretty helpful. There's also a table where you can equip relics. Relics are awarded to you at the end of each expedition, win or lose. However, the further you get into the expedition and the better you do, the better quality relics you'll receive. Each relic has 3 slots of bonuses you can receive, so obviously the better quality relics will have 3 bonuses on them. Each character then has 3 relics that they can equip, but each of them is color coded. For instance, the Guardian can equip 2 red ones and a blue. And one thing I hope gets improved here is the random nature of how the bonuses are applied to the relics. For example, I got some relics that had character specific bonuses, like for the Recluse on a yellow colored relic. Only problem with that is the Recluse can't equip yellow relics. From what I'm guessing, this is due to the random nature of drops and bonuses in the roguelike mechanics. However, to me, that seems like it makes the chances of a character specific bonus landing on the proper color relic extremely low. So hopefully they fix that and make it so those bonuses will always be propagated on the correct color. You also earn a currency called Merc, which we couldn't use in the network test, but you can sell relics to get more Merc. So we'll see what that's used for in the full game. Once you've explored everything in the roundtable, it's time to hop into an expedition with your friends or randoms. During the first session of the network test, there were server issues, and only some people were able to connect and get some experience playing before nothing worked across the board. The next 3 sessions saw multiplayer passwords disabled, so it was chaos jumping into expeditions with randoms, honestly. Most of which were loot goblins and just grabbed everything. But for the final day's 2 sessions of the network test, multiplayer passwords were enabled, and this vastly improved the experience playing the game. This leads me into talking about the meat of expeditions and why playing with friends seems to be a pretty crucial part of the experience. You start out your expedition incredibly weak at level 1. The first thing you should probably do is work together to clear the first nearby camp you can see and run back to the Grace and level up. Here you'll see the biggest jump in your health and FP and stamina, which offers way more survivability. There's a maximum of 15 levels, and like I mentioned before, the primary damage stats were hidden, so we couldn't really take note of any of those, unfortunately. Each expedition consists of surviving 3 days. Any and all levels and equipment grabbed in the expedition is lost upon winning or losing, except the relics, as I mentioned earlier. Each day is about 15 minutes long, and the Fortnite elements I touched on earlier come into play here, and the nighttime and impending storm closes in on your party and funnels you into the center of the map where you will face off against that day's boss. You want to be a bare minimum of level 3 by the time that happens, but if you make efficient use of your time, that shouldn't be a problem. This is kind of one gripe I have with the game. It's like Elden Ring at 100 miles an hour in turbo mode, if you will. I play Souls games very methodically, and if you do too, this will be the biggest adjustment for you. You'll need to open chests filled with weapons and consumables and pay attention to the bonuses, attack power, and minimum required level of weapons before you can snatch them up. So for me, I feel like the day cycles could be extended to 30 minutes or something. However, I do understand why it's only 15 minutes. These expeditions are meant to be fairly fast and not eat much time up for those who want to jump into a game quickly and then hop off. My recommendations for starting out would be utilize the map and identify churches which have additional healing flasks in them. You can get up to two additional and a third awarded once you make it to day 3. There's certainly varying strategies on how to survive the days and maximize your success, and I'd love to hear what your strategies are if you played the network test, so feel free to share them in the comments. My successful runs seem to rely on taking out some easy encampments and bosses and leveling up as much as possible, in addition to grabbing the extra flasks. Bosses reward you with weapons and bonuses, and the end of the day boss will reward you with strictly bonuses for your character. Once you make it to day 3, you want to be as close to level 15 as possible. The highest I got to was level 13. There are merchants that can help you along the way with weapons, wondrous physic flasks, and smithing stones, which you can use to upgrade your weapons. Splitting up isn't a great idea early on, at least unless your team is completely confident in their abilities, since it seems that enemies are scaled up to be fought with 3 players. Now, this could change in the full game since you can play offline and solo at that point, but since this was a network test, we got the full co op experience. If you die, you respawn back at the Grace and you lose a level, so definitely not an ideal situation, especially if you split up from your party. I definitely think the game would benefit from an in game voice chat so you can talk with your party members. I saw on Reddit that someone ran around the map and cleared everything, even while staying inside the storm. This is certainly risky since staying in the storm drains your HP, but it's definitely possible to do this since scaling bosses spawn a grace after they're defeated, which will replenish your flasks and FP. If you're successful at beating the boss encounter in day 1, the night will be repulsed, as they call it, and you will move on to day 2, where your strategy should remain the same for whatever worked for you so far. Again, the storm funnels you into the center of the map for another boss encounter. It should be noted that you need to level up graces before starting the boss encounters, otherwise, you won't be able to. So, if you're jumping in with randoms and everyone is running around everywhere, chances are you're going to get screwed out of grabbing those last levels before the boss. Once day 2 is repulsed, you move on to day 3, which is a single boss encounter with what is called the Night Lord. There was only one Night Lord in the network test, but I won't spoil that here. But it was a brand new boss for the game and leverages the co op mechanics in the game very well. And it was extremely well made, as we have come to expect from software. Overall, this was a great experience, and playing with other content creators, friends, and viewers will be the highlight when the full game releases. The network test has definitely sold me on the final product. I have my gripes I already mentioned, but my main concern is that the game has enough variety in it to sustain limitless replayability, because that's what you need in a roguelike. You need it to feel different and fresh every single run. From Software hasn't let me down yet, and I feel between the massive amount of Elden Ring maps and assets, along with assets from their previous titles, which will be mixed in, there should be the type of variety that I and other players are looking forward to in the full version of the game. There have been some complaints like, why isn't this DLC for Elden Ring? Or this feels like a mod made for Elden Ring. To address the DLC complaint, this is a completely different Elden Ring experience. traversal and the gameplay loop are completely different and wouldn't feel right, in my opinion, attached to the base game. Plus, with this, you don't need to own base Elden Ring. I will say this does feel like a fan made mod, but this will have the From Software quality and polish we know and love, and is priced accordingly, in my opinion. So, those are my thoughts on the network test. Probably a little long winded, but I wanted to give you all the information I can and lay it all out. So, what do you guys think? Did you play the network test? What was your experience like? Will you be buying the full game? Let me know in the comments. I hope this video helped you out in making a purchase decision, but that is going to do it for now. So hopefully you're all doing well. Stay tuned. More coming at you. Take care.
Hey, all right, nice, easy peasy.